better. Episode 34 of your favourite Dota 2 podcast. Today we're talking about dynamic strategies, basic strategies, basically anything to save yourself from the mindless nature of pub Dota and get some thinking on the table, some thoughts on the table. Joining me as always, Marco and Adam. Marco, welcome to the pod. Special pod for you. Perseverance pod from a far away from home.
Well, yeah, I'm lurking in the middle of some hotel in Birmingham, trying to not come across as weird as I can. 2311.
Yeah, you're going to be coming across even weirder, repeating yourself for the second time in 15 minutes because we recorded the first 10 minutes of the podcast without realizing we hadn't actually clicked record. So,
yeah. So is this like? Are you sure this isn't episode 34B?
It basically is. Yeah. Yeah. That's one that I'm going to take on the chin. Forgot to get Craig in, our favourite Discord recording bot. So I can already tell. Yeah, I preferred my first intro, to be honest. I shouldn't have deleted. I shouldn't have deleted my Audacity.
Oh, you've deleted it.
Yeah, I could have put it over.
It's hard to feign excitement a second time over.
Yeah, I know. The first intro was like this big, exciting, like, whoa, welcome. And then this one's like, yeah, so if we could just get back to where I left off and just quickly rush through this introduction.
We'll have to give one of those newsreels of 30 seconds newsreels of what we said.
This is what you missed. Yeah, luckily, though, we were only recording for about 6.5, 7 minutes, so not too disastrous. But one of the things we did talk about that's definitely worth repeating is the Adam Ding. I'll say congratulations for a second time.
Thank you.
Well done.
So, such a big deal that we had to talk about it twice. That Divine 4, if anyone's curious, Divine 4 is currently at about 5k flat. So, I'm sure it will keep going down as the season progresses. It should, it was supposed to go for 6 months. It's already been 7, right? I feel like it should refresh, but maybe they're just waiting until after TI.
Last season was longer than 6 months as well, I believe. So
I also didn't this season start. See, I thought that because the first ever seasons I think started in November or something. But I have a feeling this season, it started really late, didn't it?
Yeah, it definitely. I think first season, 6 months. Second season, not 6 months. So yeah, I think we've probably got a couple more months, like 1.5 maybe.
It's definitely like Last Chance Saloon. The going rates have never been lower in terms of dinging a new MMR. Yeah. I personally want to follow in Adam's footsteps and get my climb going. Because one thing I didn't mention actually in the first attempt at this pod was that I fixed my internet. Yay! Major pod. My goodness.
TV no longer OP.
Yeah, literally, for the listeners that don't know, I had what is known as buffer bloat in the local network, in the sense that the TV, when it was on, even though we have about 30 megabytes per second and you need, you can use a digital TV with less than 10 megabytes per second, like comfortably, the TV would use the entire bandwidth for a few seconds to buffer forward, if you know what I mean, like buffer the next however many minutes of stuff, and the next few seconds of stuff, so it would mega clog the bandwidth for half a second, which made my PC go to about 400, 500 ping for a split second, and then it would do it again 5 seconds later, so I would get these crazy 500 ping spikes every few seconds. So basically made Dota unplayable. But I got it solved. I bought a router with bandwidth control, and so from what has become my evil headquarters where I have my computer, I can basically determine how much bandwidth is allocated to each device on the Wi-Fi. So that's a major pog. I can now hog all the bandwidth for my own computer if I wish.
And your parents can still watch Come Dine With Me, or Can't Pay, We'll Take It Away.
Yeah, they get to enjoy the top quality UK TV. Yeah.
And when Adam says "come down with me," they mean Adam's Twitch stream, obviously. Dota TV.
No, the TV show on BBC, sir. BBC Three, I think. I don't remember.
I can't wait for the day I turn that on randomly and I see Adam hosting it or something.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know what Divine 1 will be, but probably about 4.5K or something.
Yeah, 4.6, 4.7 maybe.
Yeah, that's within reach. I've been winning some games recently as well, so hopefully I can get my climb on.
I'll just keep playing Spirit Breaker. That's the plan.
Charge into Immortal Kappa.
Yeah. Ride the space cow to the moon, I think is what I said.
Yeah. Quick shout out, or quick little teaser, before we get onto the topic at hand. It's TI season. The qualifiers are flying around. I've been enjoying watching bits and bobs of what I can. Big plans for new meta over TI. Super excited to, well, I would say plan to, but it's going to happen, even if it's just me, but it should be a bunch of the new meta squad doing daily TI overview/review podcasts, sort of like 45 minute pods every day to basically go over all of the action during that time and discuss the best games and discuss who's doing well, who's doing not, and all of our analysis and all of that good stuff. I'm super surprised that something like this hasn't really been done before. I know on Reddit people did threads where they basically went over the games in written form, and they were really popular, so that made me think, man, someone should really do this in the podcast. They do it for things like the World Cup, the Olympics, all major sporting events like golf tournaments and everything. They do these daily reviews, and they're all wildly popular, so we're very much hoping to do the same thing for TI. Forming the new meta hub to watch. Are we not, Marco?
New meta hub.
Absolutely. Going to be reunited.
Yeah. So hopefully we're going to get a circular table with like a 360 degree mic and hopefully get some good content rolling around. It will be interesting though, because we'll be dealing with 3 different time zones probably, because we'll have a lot of people in the UK hopefully watching together at this hub that we're hoping to make happen with just friends and stuff to watch TI. Obviously the event is in China, and then it wouldn't be a true new meta pod if we didn't get Adam to call in as much as we can, or whatever.
It's going to be so wild. It's going to be so late, I think, at night.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it works out. Worst case scenario is we just call, it's like an interview style thing where I just Discord you at a random time during the day for like a little segment, for like a 5-10 minute segment.
It's like what they do on Match of the Day, where they just randomly cut in the middle of analysis and Klopp in some massive headphones. Like, we spoke to Jurgen Klopp after the game, and it's this awkward interview.
Yeah. It'll be something like that.
Or I could just shift my sleep schedule and just stay up all night. Just not go into work.
We'll see how it plays out. Although it might work in our benefit, because I think we looked at the way the games will fall on a China timeline, and there'll probably be games that you will see because they'll be in your evening time, like US evening time. But we won't be able to see them because they'll be too early for us, or too late, or something like that. And so we could get something cool worked out. We could call you up during the pod or before recording the pod, get some special info if we haven't managed to catch those games. I wonder see how it goes.
If we record the pod first thing. Actually, not sure if that timing works.
No, we'll be recording after it's finished.
Yeah,
because it will the games in China will finish relatively early compared to UK time.
Yeah.
But the US is so far away that it's like the other way around. So it's almost, for US audience, it'll almost be like you stay up really late to watch the games that are happening the next day in China, if you know what I mean. It gets weird.
Yeah.
Like,
US is just imbalagged like a day.
Kind of, yeah. More or less, yeah. But yeah, I wanted to put that out there early doors, get people excited. I'm certainly super excited. 1, because it's TI, and 2, because daily pods are awesome. I love them for all kinds of sporting events, so should be real good fun. So, topic of the day, basic strategies.
What about my story?
Oh, your story. Sorry.
Yikes.
Sorry. Almost forgot Adam's story that we were halfway through your story and then when we realised that Craig wasn't in.
Feels bad. Actually, I have 2 stories now because I have to give a shout out because it's the first time I've ever been noticed in a pub game before for my name.
Hey.
From the podcast. So shouts out to Play Fast, Eat Ass for recognizing me.
NA Pubs.
Big friend of the pod.
Said are you the American from the podcast, from New Meta Podcast? I'm like, that's me. Wow.
Gee.
Yeah, feels good. Sick. And then I got stomped, and I had to be a good loser and be like, GG.
Yeah.
Well played. Can't lose my head. So shouts out for the shout out. And I guess just so this is the second time attempting to tell the story, but what made it I wanted to tell it was because it was, I think, the most I've ever been griefed in a game.
Buckle up, listeners, again.
This is orders of magnitude more than the patented Marco buyback. Like,
what?
This is nigh impossible outside of somebody actually, feeding the curry or feeding wards or something like that, walking down mid. So I was playing with a stack of friends. It was a 4-stack. We had a random 5th. It was like midnight, and we're like, okay, let's play one more game. It'll be fast. Usually it's in high skill tier. So not like the most intense games. I'm like the highest MMR person in the stack. So generally I get to play core.
Nice.
Played a carry-ish Underlord from the off lane. So I went like Midas and Echo Saber and Blink, and then like Deso. So just blowing up people with Atrophy Aura, getting permanent stacks of damage, and then just killing people all over. And we got into a really nice lead, even though it was like even on net worth. We were just taking all the towers, and they were just having to dodge us. And we take a couple good fights, and we take mega creeps at like probably 40 minutes, 45 minutes. And like, cool, we're going to end this game, and I'm going to get to go to bed at a reasonable time. All we need to do is just finish the game. And their lineup was Pudge, middle. Their safe lane was... One sec. This is really strange. Okay. It was Slark and Warlock safe lane. So I just dumpstered that lane because Underlord. And then the off lane was Sniper Techies. So they had Sniper Techies.
I was waiting for
Pudge,
you to say Techies.
Yeah. Sniper Techies Pudge, Warlock, Slark. So they can hold megas. We don't need to throw the game, right? Even though we're ahead and we got mega creeps, it even says on the net worth, looking at Dota buff, that we were within 2K, even with that many towers and buildings ahead. And so my middle Zeus decides that we've won the game, and he decides to buy 2 Divine Rapiers as a middle Zeus. And then he doesn't even right-click with them once against a tower because he dies solo to a smoke gank, pushing out a wave solo. So he feeds 12,000 gold to the Pudge and the Slark, and that's a 24,000 gold swing. And the Pudge had 51 stacks of Flesh Heap at the end, and he had a Heart, and he had a Battle Fury. So he could just push out one wave on his own with one right click. But that doesn't just stop there. Our random 5th Razor thought that the Zeus buying 2 rapiers was just the coolest thing ever. So he also buys 2 rapiers. And he dies, and he feeds 12,000 gold to the other team. So it's actually a 48,000 gold swing against us. And that time the sniper got him, I'm pretty sure. But they had sniper, and they had techies mines everywhere. They had Pudge, and they had Slark. And then by the time the game goes so late, the Warlock has refresher ags. It's like, how do we actually end the game? And I'll just say we took the Megas at 45 minutes. It was an 86-minute game, and we lost. And I was pretty mad.
Yeah, I don't mind. Silence for that. Oh my god.
Also, I'll say an 86-minute game, and I was the only person on my team to buy a BKB. Like, Razor bought 2 rapiers before he bought a BKB. You have to have a BKB if you're gonna have 2 rapiers, just so you can not explode. Yeah. But it was a crazy game. We tried to come back and break the base. We got a bunch of Roshans. I mean, there were a lot of Ags buffs. Like we had a Dazzle. We tried to do Ags Dazzle so he could like AoE grave us and try and do something that way. We got the Ancient down to 30 HP and they glyphed and they wiped us. And then they counter pushed middle and killed us. And
the question is whether those friends are still on your friends list or if they're
still. I have not played with them, blocked. But I had to. It was like 2 a.m. at that point. I was just like, I just wanted to go to sleep. I wanted to win with this cool like Underlord thing. Yeah. That
is, I mean, when it's one more game before bed and you're up against sniper techies, that's one of those where you fail to break the base once and you just want to abandon the game.
Yeah.
Because you're just like, I see where this is going and I do not like it. Sniper techies, like, just leave me alone, please.
I don't even think we could have lost unless we just gifted them 4 rapiers.
Well, yeah, and then, yeah.
What's our loss condition in this game? Maybe 4 rapiers. All right, let's try this out.
And it's like from a Zeus too, right? Just like you don't attack very fast. It's just like buy a Hex or something. Buy a Meteor Hammer.
Did this Zeus just quietly buy 2 rapiers, or was it announced beforehand or anything?
No, he's like, I know what I need to get, because he was going 2 rapiers and then he was going to get a Moon Shard.
Okay, so it's just like, that's just griefing, like, actually.
Yeah. It was tough.
That's one of those games, and I know I've had these, that's one of those games where you finish it and you're just like, I'm actually done with party stacks. I don't want to play party anymore. I don't want to play with these people ever again.
I think I just started playing Spirit. I started playing like solo games the next day. Then I ranked up and I was like, this is a little bit better. It takes some of the edge off. But it was I mean, what a clown fiesta, right? I can kind of almost laugh at it now, but it's just like, why do this?
Yeah. Part of Dota's rich tapestry. We'll come back to dwell on this game as a moment, an episode. Topic at hand, though, after some drums. Basic strategy in Dota. Today's topic basically was inspired by 2 things. First of all, Dan on the Discord. Shout out to Dan Mitz something. I can't remember. Mizuchi, something like that.
Mizuchi.
In the questions page of the Discord, he basically asked, what's a good strategy for pub Dota, effectively? Should we be doing some really crazy push strat or some crazy 4 protect 1 strat? And basically, we thought that was a pretty interesting question to pose in general. And the angle that we'll take on the question is more of like a base strategy, like a basic, somewhat dynamic, general strategy that you can apply to pretty much every game that you play, from solo pubs to party pubs to anything. And just what are the building blocks of of actual strategic thinking in a game. So that was first bit of inspiration. The second bit of inspiration was a game that I actually played yesterday with Viper, where basically we accidentally executed all the principles that we'll be discussing in this pod. And I won't go through the game now, because I feel like we should get to the topic at hand before another story time. So there are two inspirations, and I'll come back to the Viper game, like I said. First things first, when I was thinking about a basic strategy, what I thought was, in every game of Dota, you should have a period of the game in which you think that your team will be very strong, and therefore a period of the game in which you plan to effectively win the game, or maybe not kill the throne, but take the game by the scruff of the neck kind of thing. I don't know what you guys think about that. I was thinking that if you don't have already conceptually in your mind a timing that your team will be very strong versus the other team, and you're already cognizant of that timing before the game, then that's kind of bad. You really should be working towards a timing where you're going to be strong, and you should mentally know that that's a timing in which you really should take advantage of. I don't know what you think about that initial premise. Is that something that you think about particularly when you're trying to strategically think about how a game's going to flow?
I think it's harder for the middle, more normal kind of drafts to pinpoint that. I think it's easier to think about it if you take extreme examples. So say if you think about a team which is, say, 5 agi heroes, or a team that's 5 int heroes, say like, oh yes, these are shit lineups. Okay, but what I think is a true point is that any 5 hero lineup is going to have some period of time where the gold XP, say, scale from like 0 to 25, whatever, will have its optimum like point. And so if you think about, say, some agi heroes, they're not looking to take the game by the scruff of its neck from minute 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever. They're going to be looking to just farm as much as possible. If you go to the other end of the spectrum and say there's some 5 intel lineup, they want to be taking the game from minute 5 when everyone's level 4 and just start snowballing the lane because they're all spellcasters, etc., etc. I think I see those as two ends of a spectrum, and then like every other 5-man lineup in the middle. And I think for all of them, you could say like at what levels and at what items would our team be at its strongest and like most able to take a game by the scruff of its neck. And I think it's thinking about those two aspects really. Because I mean, yeah, what else is to think about? Levels and items are everything. But it is just like identifying like overall across your whole team, like, yeah, who needs what level, who needs what item. I'm like, because that will complement the heroes specifically, and that will be your like best chance, if you like, of taking the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So when you're, at least when I think about the middle examples, and obviously the extreme examples you gave are more clear cut. But for all of those ones in the middle, which is effectively every lineup that you're going to run into in pubs, I feel like oftentimes, at least at its core, it will often come down to how the position ones match up, like how these game defining. Often you hear the term like game winning hero, your game winner, like thrown around, almost always your position one or your top farm priority, and how that hero matches up with the enemy team, and particularly the enemy game-winning hero will often define when a whole team will build towards that spike, particularly for that position one. So that's, at least in my mind, that's how I would conceptualize this spike that you want to work around. You want to work around when your most important hero, your highest farm hero, is reaching its spike relative to the enemy team. If you can complement that, that's like the power spike conceptualized. That's going to be your best bet.
I think there's also,
in terms of winning the game, because there's going to be other times where your other 4 heroes are really strong, and they might be really strong at a time where your one's really bad. That's when you like you make plays, but you don't necessarily win the game with like a high ground push. That's when you get more ahead and
but I think
condition this spike.
I think it's necessary to think about those like big team spike, whatever you want to call them, before that game-winning one happens. Because like you said,
definitely,
there's going to be one like later in the game. Your roll one comes online, and he's got the 2 or 3 items he needs, and you're able to close out the game. But I think it'll always be the case that you've needed to hit like 3 earlier spikes with your other 4 heroes, or earlier secure some earlier objectives. So like some like minor minius half spikes, whatever, need to be hit as well, like necessary, like have to be hit as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So
I definitely agree with that.
Don't need to just speak about one, but I think there would be like a few small ones into a big one, if not.
Are we talking about, is this pub Dota? Not like Captain's Mode, right?
I mean, it's applicable to both.
Well, just like, because in ranked, I'm spamming Spirit Breaker, right?
Yeah.
Always either first pick or first phase. If you get the 2 picks the other on the other side. And with something like that, you want to make sure like you want to kind of pick something around like that can play around the first pick. You don't want to pick something that goes completely against what somebody has just picked. And I can give an example of, so I pick Spirit Breaker, right? And that's a lane winner, a multiple lane winner, someone that like, so you want to have an off laner, because I'm playing as a 4.
Yeah.
Like an off laner that can be somewhat self-reliant, but also have some pretty, I guess, kill potential, or at least can like do something with the Spirit Breaker. And then when you go to another lane, they can kind of hold the space and get all the XP and gold. And then in your other lanes, you want to have some kill potential as well. And when I can just give you an example of the game that I played where against a person that recognized me, and I picked Spirit Breaker, and then we end up with a Night Stalker off lane, which is, I think, pretty terrible with a Spirit Breaker, because the first 5 minutes is when Spirit Breaker wins the lanes, and you actually don't do anything as Night Stalker for the first 5 minutes of the game. And then the other side lane has a Drow in it, Drow safe lane. So you can't do anything in that lane either. And then mid was Wind Ranger against Ember Spirit. And it's pretty hard to kill him too if he goes Flame Guard. So, because, I mean, the Wind Ranger doesn't do anything outside of Power Shot for the most part and some right clicks. And it's harder to gank mid, honestly, as Spirit Breaker because of the short walk distance back to the tier 1 tower. So usually it's just like me charging from side lane to side lane, TPing back to regen, and then charging back out to another side lane with a smoke so they don't see me coming type of thing. It's really hard to gank mid. So it's basically ruined our chances just from the start of making anything happen because we counterpicked ourselves. And
yeah, so I guess what I would think for another example I'd give of the Spirit Breaker is like, at least in terms of fitting into this general strategy of when are we power spiking in the game, what I was thinking was more along the lines of, if we have a lineup that's really strong between this 20 to 25 minute mark, or 20 to 30 minute mark, that's when we're winning the game, literally say. And
yeah, say
you basically, even on a Spirit Breaker 4, you want to be playing the game in the knowledge that during that time, that's when you really need to be, that's your go time. And so you might say, I need a Spirit Vessel, say, for 20 minutes, and that's like a top priority this game because our super spike is at 20 minutes, rather than say, okay, actually I'll reach for, say, I don't know, 2 braces and a Heaven's Halberd for 30 minutes because we're going to be really strong at like 30, 35 minutes. And then from that point, you add the layers of, well, maybe I need to itemize to get to 30 minutes rather than specifically itemize so we're omega strong at 30 minutes. Maybe I need to itemize for 20 minutes just so we can get to 30 minutes. Or maybe I need to play the lanes this way because we need a strong laning stage in order to reach this. The way I construct it is, or the way I have been constructing it is, you start with this power spike and then you layer on the layers.
Yeah, I think
from there.
I think you can apply that even earlier in the game and on this example. So when Adam was speaking about these heroes that you've got, I see your point of, minute 0 to 5, you charge a lane, you're not getting any kill. So therefore, I don't think your hero is bad in this case. I think it's fine for you to stay in your top lane, maybe one rotation mid to annoy the Ember, but mainly stay in your top lane, off lane, and just help Balor secure CS until that 5-minute mark comes around, because, like you said, he comes online at 5 minutes, Windrunner only comes online at level 6 Javelin, bottom only comes online when you're 06. So therefore you play according to that and just stick in your lane or harass mid a little bit, wait until they come online at these points you mentioned, and then do your shenanigans. And to me, that's also like what you were saying, Stan, of identify where these points of strength happen, right? And then like work backwards, I guess, to how you would achieve them.
Yeah, what you've outlined is just like a microcosm of, like a perfect microcosm example of thinking about power spikes in general. That's like a more refined and super good example of one. How you think about playing around spikes.
I mean, just like in picking Spirit Breaker, how I view the hero is it's a greedy hero only in the sense of the very first initial items you buy, because you don't buy any support items. You get Tango, Orb of Venom, and Stout Shield. And then after that, you kind of become a 5. It allows you to have a little bit of a more greedy 5 position. So you can do like a Lion or something. They get more of the farm. You buy the wards. You really only need like bracers and a Spirit Vessel, and then that's the only items you need for the entire game. And then you just secure space for everybody else. Space in that you harass top a bunch, and then you leave to go somewhere else. Your offlaner gets a bunch of XP now, kind of like they're in a solo lane, and you make their supports TP around to follow you, and that's kind of just how I view it. But I just think if you pick things that don't do anything for that period of time, you kind of just neutralize what makes the first pick good. I mean, I feel like you can pick almost any other core, any other carry besides a Drow, because like a Spectre could do something with a Spectral Dagger, or a Sven with a stun, just like anything outside of just auto attacking for the first 6 levels, right?
Yeah.
There definitely are better synergies.
From imagine in a world where you weren't first pick, and say you have the last pick, already knowing the rest of your team, in the context of what we're discussing in this episode in terms of spikes, you're going to say, well, all of our side lanes don't come online until Nightstalker doesn't come online until 5 minutes, and our position 1 and 2 don't come online until level 6, and so I'm not going to pick Spirit Breaker because there's nothing that matches my power spike, which is the first 5 minutes of the game, say. So I'm going to pick a position 4 that complements the rest of our team's spike well enough.
Yeah, it was just that was just a game where I've been playing it for so often. I was having over a kill participation a minute, 16 or 17 kills assists by 15 minutes. And then it was came this game where it's I actually can't do anything. And now my hero actually just sucks because you can't charge anywhere. And then you just feel useless or listless. And then it's oh man, I wish I picked Grimstroke or something else, right?
Yeah, sure.
So I guess, but it's just like what you said. You can salvage the game. It's just more that it became therefore is a Mars. So therefore is going to have way more to do. This entire game is way more useful because I'm not pressuring anybody. So he's just going to get the farm, and then he's going to have a blink, and then our team fight's never actually going to be able to stand up to it because I'm a Spirit Breaker and I don't do team fight. So yeah.
Moving on a little bit to sort of outlining a classic example of what I would say is a standard solid power spike in which you just win the game, something that you can conceptualize before the game starts and work towards and then execute. Obviously, adding in layers and bumps along the way, as will always happen in a game of Dota. But for me, the quintessential power spike win the game is when you have a position 1 or just a core that's tanky enough and hard enough to kill, either in their own right or with a combination with the team with saves or counter initiation, stuff like this, that basically it's impossible or extremely hard for the enemy team to fight into you, whether they have vision of this one hero or not. And a classic example will be, you often see heroes like Lifestealer, they'll pick up Radiance, and then oftentimes that's either go time or maybe Radiance plus 1 item will be the ultimate spike for the hero, and that's when that team will really come alive. And you'll see, it's not a coincidence that these other heroes have itemized to complement this playstyle, or potentially they've itemized just to get to this point because they know they're going to be strong enough themselves. Or like a Wraith King that has Radiance and has Reincarnate, impossible to kill. Morphling has an E-Blade, so his damage is crazy spiked, or a Lincoln Sphere, basically to the point that's going to get them over the hump where they can just stand at the front of a push and actually push for an objective, even when it's like 5v5. That's one example, and I'll come back to it in a sec to talk about my Viper game, which perfectly illustrates this.
Rosh is also, like you say, this tower hitter, the front line that's got the farm, the position 1. When they've got an Aegis as well, is, to me, like 95% the case. It will be.
Yeah.
Like, so
Certainly,
this pause 1, he's got these items online, the whole team's ready to go. To me, the step 0 would be all tier 2s are gone, then the rush is gone, and now it's tier 3 hit in time.
Yeah, definitely. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, in that situation, it's the perfect situation, because like you say, it's a hard hero to kill. Say you do kill it, you've blown everything, probably, and then they've just got Aegis, so now they can just happily keep going because you've just used so many resources to get rid of just the Aegis, etc. And that's like a classic 1-on-1 team spike timing, right?
Definitely, yeah. And for some heroes, it's not as important, like Wraith King, because he has it like built in, or even like a Lifestealer, you can push quite nicely with during rage duration and stuff. But
yeah,
like you say, most carry heroes, they need Aegis to become strong enough where they're not going to die, even if the enemy commits everything. Like, they're going to die once, and then the enemy's screwed because they got Aegis. So yeah, it is like definitely a step 0 in a lot of these ways. And
I like the point of. Oh, sorry. I just like the point of you pointing out like Lifestealer and Wraith King are both really good examples of just they don't do. I think they're really good examples of like you get the item and then you go. Where with Radiance, especially with Lifestealer, it's like you feel kind of stagnant as if you're playing like 4 heroes around just waiting for the Radiance to come, and then Lifestealer just starts to run at people, and between that and Rage, it's pretty impossible for the kill him with a team to back him up. So it becomes kind of like now we got the item, now we're all 5 together, now we take the towers, and then the same with Wraith King, but then it also, you come along with 16 skeletons as well, which just goes into your pushing and like how do you deal with somebody that has respawning skeletons and has a radiance aura around them with just the team all there with, and he's got an extra life too, right? So
a really similar example is Syllabur and Bulldog when he plays it, and he'll get radiance at 13, 14 because he'll skip Midas, and he's played hundreds of games, definitely hundreds of games. He gets his radi 13, 14, and the game's over by 20 because he just goes, all right, guys, ball up with me, and the enemy team can't stop it. I've watched that on his stream like tens of times. Yeah,
it's like really capitalizing on how strong the bear is for that much amount of HP the level 7 bear gets at that point in the game, like 14 minutes in. It's like, oh my god, he's got 2,700 health. How do you deal with that? Oh, we killed it. Oh, he just resummoned another one. Like, it's pretty impossible for a lot of teams to deal with. And if you get the Midas, like what Marco said, now you're not getting Radiance until 19 or 20 if you have a good game, and then it's like 2700 HP is not near as strong as it was 5 minutes earlier.
And I've got another point at what I think an even more interesting point is that you go, okay, me and my team have identified this period of time that we want to make a lot of things happen. Say this Rady pickup is a really good example. What I then think's interesting to think about is, say you're the position 2 to 5. So the position 1, they've got a straightforward game, farm that Rady. Everyone else, you should be aware that this is an objective of your team and you're going to act upon it. You should therefore not be doing dumb stuff that doesn't align with that power spike. It's the same message that we've said, but if that's what you're aiming to do, don't then try and be going crazy Rambo for 15 minutes when you just want to be calm and casual and farm 15 minutes. You see what I mean?
Definitely, yeah.
Prioritize, say, your own gold and XP, knowing, just get your one item, get your urn or something, and get your level such that you're ready to then boom and ball up at this Rady timing, rather than head crazy aggression, trying to hunt kills or do some crazy burning all your smokes before the rest of your team's online, or just taking the wrong priorities. For
exactly.
example,
that's
who head crazy, just calm the fuck down. You've got this basic objective that's going to come online at 15 or 20 minutes. Play according to that.
Yeah, that's basically just the whole crux of the episode, right? It's at least, like I said, you have this power spike in mind, and then what you've just said is the one step back, or maybe 2 steps back, where you think, well, we've got a Wraith King that's going to have Radiance in 3 minutes' time, say, and once you've consciously thought that, because I hope that you've thought before the game, that's a good go time for us, then it's exactly what you said. Let's just, rather than smoking and going Rambo and trying to play around our Wraith King who just wants to farm, you just make a subtle move to the other side of the map, bring some heroes away from Wraith King. Exactly, make space.
Defensive wards, etc. There's no reason to ward the deepest enemy spot at 10 minutes in when you're waiting for your relic Rady to come online.
And also don't if you're a mid hero, say, and you have the choice of, I could farm and work towards my next big item in say 5-6 minutes, or I can this is actually a very good time for me to just make a play, just to make sure my position 1 gets this super important item in 2 minutes time. So this is actually a good time to apply pressure rather than just farming. And little things like that, and making sure we have a smoke left if we want to smoke as soon as we get this big item. Just things like this, it's almost it is 1 or 2 steps back. As long as you've consciously thought about this power spike, that's the next step, is to think, how do we make sure this happens, if you know what I mean?
Yeah. A similar example and idea is also when I think about even earlier in the game, and say you're thinking about laning stage in, so this is kind of a parallel comment, but if you're in the laning stage, and I felt like I've had personal examples, but you should identify, like we've been saying, when you're going to be strong and when you're going to come online. And we've said it in other episodes before, what level, say, do you need to hit where you can then make stuff happen? Or say you're got a Tusk in your lane, don't try and force something before he gets level 2. Bang, he gets level 2 and you can make something happen. I feel like it's really common where I'll be trying to lane with someone and then they've not realized or don't realize that I want to just get to level 4 or level 5 or even just level 6 or even just minute 10 before, say, I do something, because it's only until that point that my hero is strong and capable. Say I'm on Mars or something, I've played with people and been just let me get loads of farm, let me get a phase level 5, level 6, and then I'll get active. Stop trying to make me get a kill before that point, because you're just wasting my time and resources in CS for no real gain, because I'm not my strongest until a later point. So it's always thinking, where do these strengths really come in? Where do they kick in the most? And then just play calm until that point happens, or maybe that point has happened. EG level 2 for lots of heroes, boom, go. Yeah, just an example I had in my head, burning, to be said.
Yeah, for sure. I'll briefly touch on the point I was going to make just after Marco had talked about how important the Aegis is. For a lot of carries that are like high kill potential carries, like heroes maybe like Ursa, or even Sven, I think. Sven may be a little bit different because I feel like even with an Aegis, you probably don't want to just push with a Sven in the front. He very much does want to play with out of vision and all the rest of it. Ursa the same, I suppose, but with an Aegis you can push with him. For these heroes, it's like we hit a power spike of, say, Blink, Basher, or whatever it is, or the Sven gets Blink, Echo, BKB, say. And then it's not like you can just barrel down a lane 5v5. You probably want to get a kill, then get Roche, and then the Aegis is, for those types of lineups, the Aegis is like especially important. And so in situations like that, that's like working backwards again is like we smoke with this item or we smoke during this time because of how strong we are, and then Roche is number one priority, even if there's a free tier 2 or you get a kill and then you might be able to chase and get another one. It's just like be cognizant of what your spike is, and if Aegis is the be all and end all of your spike, literally the make or break, then you need to prioritize that objective way higher than anything else. And just that was a kind of obvious kind of throwaway point I was going to make. Also, I'll talk about my Viper game here that basically was inspiration for this entire episode. For me, this is the perfect example of a power spike coming together, because we had it, like I said, it was almost by accident. We stumbled upon this insane spike in which we were basically behind the entire game almost, and then suddenly we hit this power spike in which the enemies couldn't do anything, and we just won the game. We just pushed and won the game, and with one push. Basically, I was a Viper middle. We had a Wraith King position 1, a Weaver offlane, and a Lion Rubik kind of both position 4.5. In this game, basically, we'd been effectively losing to a Brood Mother, although our side lanes had been pretty bad as well, and we were a bit behind on gold, a bit behind on XP, kind of struggling in the game. But then suddenly Wraith King got Radiance at 21 minutes, and then at 22 minutes he finished Blink. So he had Radiance, Blink at 22 minutes. I finished my Greaves at 22 minutes. Rubik had Blink at 21 minutes, and Weaver had Diffusal Blade at like 19 minutes, so there or thereabouts. And upon that power spike right there at 22 minutes, we were still pretty much even on gold, but we basically just grouped up and the enemies literally couldn't do anything. Like, there was absolutely no way they could touch us. It was like the most egregious example of just a power spike, like item and go, like what Adam was saying. Blink, Radion, Wraith King, Guardian Greaves on me, Viper. And it gave me inspiration for the episode because it was almost accidentally perfect. Like, I had thought we're going to have, I'd thought about it a little bit, but only on the level of we're going to have a Wraith King that's going to have Radiance, Blink. I really want Guardian Greaves when this guy gets Radiance. That's like my number one objective this game. Get Guardian Greaves by the time this guy has Radiance. And it paid off because we basically got them at a really similar time. And that was basically all we needed to win the game. And then suddenly we have this Weaver that is almost gets his Diffusal Blade and complements that really well himself, as being sort of sneaky backline damage. Because obviously we push with Wraith King in the front, impossible to kill with a Radiance, with a Blink, with Reincarnate. Me sort of next to him, near him. If they go on Wraith King, I just Greaves. If they go on me, I Greaves. I've got Nether Toxin, and then we have a Rubik with Blink ready to pounce. We have a Lion ready to pounce with Counter Initiate, and we have a Weaver that's got crazy good damage and has a Diffusal Blade. And we just won the game. And it made me think, goodness, that just shows if you plan around power spikes and itemize and strategically are cognizant of power spikes, it can go a long way. And to me, that fit perfectly with the example of a classic carry, Wraith King, and just a classic power spike. So I thought that was worth shouting out.
Yeah, there's nothing more frustrating when speaking from a position one often player, when you know you're really strong and you want to start making stuff happen, you want to go, and then the rest of your team isn't on the same wavelength, or I want to farm for 4 more minutes, and you're like, but let's go, I'm really strong. Your example is just the perfect sync.
And when it happens, when it comes together, you just win. It feels really good.
Yeah, definitely. And just to illustrate, we obviously play pub Dota. That's the Dota we know. Just to illustrate why I thought that was particularly special, a lot of people might hear me talk about that Viper game and think, so what? That's pretty normal, right? That just happens. But it's the point of, and I mean, I'm no Dota strategy guru. Like I said, it was almost by accident this happened, but you could so easily, in lower MMR games, this Viper just goes Dragonlance Maelstrom, and it's like, you're not adding anything to this power spike at all. What's the point of you? Like, we have a Weaver with Diffusal Blade and Treads and 2 Wraith Bands. Why is a Viper going Dragonlance Maelstrom? You don't add anything. Or at the same time, we could have a Wraith King that goes Radiance and then farms and tries to get like S and Y AC and just lets the Radiance power spike go by completely. Or indeed we have a Weaver that's going Dragonlance Daedalus, which he won't complete until, 28 minutes to 30 minutes, say, rather than this straight Treads Diffusal, which syncs up perfectly with our team. Or a Weaver that's going, say, Lincoln Sphere Aghanim Scepter. It's like, that's not how you fit into this lineup. And that would just, again, wouldn't complement the power spike at all. So that's why I thought this game was particularly of interest for this episode, because it's one of those where it could so easily not happen. There'll be countless games where power spikes, game-winning power spikes, just come and go because players don't think about ways in which they can just straight up win the game.
Yeah, similar to the idea of what makes a player a better player, and one of the big factors is how they can recognize an advantage and take it. So if you're laying against a really good player, you'll probably find yourself dying, and that's because this really good player or relatively better player is able to identify where they can take an advantage or where you've made a mistake and capitalize on it. And then this is just kind of aggregating it to the team level of everyone then thinking, okay, I actually know that my hero, my position, where does it fit most strongly into the rest of my team, or is it this minute mark with this kind of item? And like your example is everyone being on that correct page and coming together at that correct, strongest possible time, building the best items possible and executing what then is like a piss easy ALF click, we can't lose kind of draft. And that is the dream scenario you want to be in. And most lineups will have that kind of dream scenario where it's like could be an effortless execution, but you've got to like think about where your strengths are and where your timings are.
So once you've got this initial idea of a spike, which I think, as we've discussed, can be difficult, but is nonetheless something you should always be thinking about. Even if you just first pick and you have no idea what the rest of your team's going to pick, still look at the 5 heroes you've got and look at the enemies and think, what period of the game are we going to be strong? Working backwards from that, Adam, I don't know if you had say you were playing in an RD12 game or indeed just a pub game, and you have this period of the game in which you think, yeah, that's the period of the game in which we want to win the game at. What things are you going to be thinking about? What's the next step back? Like, what are you going to do to make sure it happens, or what kind of things would you do to optimize it, sort of thing? How would you want to be playing before that moment?
I don't know if I would use RD12 as an example because we haven't won a laning stage in any of our games so far. So anything we drafted gets thrown out the window. We just try and survive.
Yeah.
Try and scrap. to the next stage of the game. And I guess that is something you can do. If it goes bad, you got to try and survive, right? You got to try and make space. Usually in that case, it's like when we have come back from 20 plus K down, it's been either like once was with a bounty hunter draft as a one position. So we're like, well, you just got to group up. We just got to get track gold. Like that's what we have to do. It's just to get kills on supports over and over again and get us some track gold to get back into this game. And then hopefully they'll throw. And that's what happened. And then another game, we had Grimstroke Doom. So is this like we have to hold high ground and we got to have buybacks up and we got to let them overextend and we'll double doom them and we'll win the fight that way. Because even if we're 25K down, we'll equalize it with just having two of their heroes not actually be worth anything. So, I mean, yes, picking Grimstroke Doom as a lane combo is really trash. Like it's part of the reason why we ended up 25K in the hole, but it's also a way that we are able to secure the extreme late game. So that's one way, I guess, from behind. Outside of that, I guess I would just think about what your role is and whether you're the person that needs to be building towards the spike or if you're the person making space for the spike. And because you could be the strongest person right then. That for like a support, you're the strongest early. So it's up to you to use your spike to either set up vision so that your carry can be safe or for you to harass their cores to where they're uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I would just say, I'll throw it open to Marco in a sec, but I would just say whether you're the person that needs to make sure the spike happens, as in you need to be active and be strong before the overall team spike, or whether you're the person that needs to make sure you're farming and so you can share in that spike, maybe you are the position one yourself or such thing, that can actually change during the game. I'm thinking of the Viper game here again, just fresh in the memory, because I was very much, because we were kind of behind in the game, I was very much making space for our Wraith King to get this game-defining first couple of items, like the Radiance Blink sort of thing. For a long time, that was my role, was making space, running around the map with a death squad of Rubik and Lion, and to a certain extent Weaver, getting kills. I built a Rod of Atos, and I was like, I need to just be like running around, sacrifice my own farm, because it's not important for our team spike that's coming up in about 25 minutes. But after a while, when that was mildly successful, I realised, well, if I want Greaves by sort of 20-25 minutes, when our Wraith King has Radiance, when he has Radiance Blink, I actually need to be farming now. And then it was an interesting sort of switch in which I said I now need to farm for 3 minutes to make sure I have Greaves for this big power spike, and then it was up to Weaver and the Lion and the Rubik to make some smaller plays and not even kill plays, but just applying pressure on other sides of the map so that I could get a little bit of farming. And so it's good to constantly reevaluate your position in the game. It might not be as clear cut as you think. At different points in the game, it's going to change. Marco, I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just saying it ebbs and flows. I mean,
definitely, yeah.
Like, just because you're the position one doesn't mean you're the most important person to farm the entire game, right? Like, you have to get an item and then you go do something with the item you just got, and maybe somebody else's item becomes the next more important thing. And I kind of imagine that with like your 1 and 2 kind of being like, I was going to say something like an oscillating, like two like waves basically, right? That are just half a wavelength apart or whatever. So that one's cresting while the other one's waning, and they just kind of like go back and forth, kind of like a double helix, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the idea is that you've got either the position one making space for your more farm orientated 2, or vice versa. Obviously, this example where the 2 make space is more common, but I just had the example. I thought, say, if you've got maybe you've got a Juggernaut 1 and an Invoker 2, say. Everyone knows Invoker needs to, as a slow, immobile hero, wants to farm a lot of items and get a lot of XP. Jug, on the other hand, can easily get involved and be much more active and less passive with, say, phase drums. He can get stuck in straight away. Thinking about how this pre-spike, how do we get to where we want to be? When I was thinking through the roles, I feel like it's often just a somewhat binary path that you could take in each of your roles. And I think it's a decision that definitely applies to, say, each 5-minute period or even to like each 10-minute period. So say you're this 1 or 2, like Adam says, it is like this double helix. One of them is going to be hitting creeps, farming, trying to get XP and gold as much as possible. Typically your 1. And then your 2 is going to be more tempo, space making, space creating. And those 2 roles can flip. If you're the 3, the way I see it is, well, actually, I'm not thought as much about the 3, but say you're the 5, either, to me, it's like, are you needing to be more aggressive with your hero positioning, hero movement? Are you looking to help get kills because that's what your toolset will be able to do? Or do you need to be more defensive, and do you need to like create like babysit a bit more, or find that more defensive vision for your position 1 who just needs farming, etc.? Do you need to keep them safe? Because for the 4, again, I think it's like farm or kill. Is it I need to get a blink because I'm a shaker or a sanking, or is it no, I need to be forward on the map and rotating with the mid or the 5 or the 3? And you'll make those decisions based on like your own, say, I need a blink, or you'll make them based on the idea of, we've mentioned it many times, like the 1 needs space, so I'm going to go make space by making ganks happen, or the 2 needs space, so I'm going to pressure where the enemy mid laner as well. These are the kind of like binary decisions I think are really common in this pre-spike phase.
And it's pre-spike, but it's also the way you make those decisions is almost by looking at relative spikes, like mini spikes before this big time when your position 1 or your highest farm priority hero is like, now I'm online, like I've got this big item, or I've got these big items, and now the rest of the team can play around me, i.e. that's the main spike you're thinking of. Before that, it's like you said, if you're a position 5 thinking about, do I need to be aggressive? It's like, well, do I have a group of 3 or 4 heroes in which we are relatively really strong now? Like, we've got good kill potential. Say, in the game I said before, if you've got a Rubik, a Lion, and a Viper, you've basically got a kill condition on any enemy hero. So that's worth grouping up and being aggressive with to create space. Whereas if you have a hero, your position 4 is like an Earthshaker that's got 1.5k gold, then you're going to be more likely to set up defensive vision because you know relatively your spike's much weaker, and it's much better for you to play more defensively, let your Earthshaker get a blink, and then maybe make an aggressive move. Or, again, reassess, do we now have a group of 3 or 4 heroes, or do we now have a specific lane or a specific area of the map in which we are really strong to the point where it's worth me changing the way I'm playing because relatively our team or a part of our team is actually spiking really nicely. So it's all about like juggling relative strength in certain areas of the map or with certain heroes on the map, to seeing where you're best played. And obviously that's a big part of what makes a player good, right? You can talk about that until the cows come home. That's such a high level thing to think about. One thing I would like to ask or float the idea of, if you are going to conceptualize the game in this manner, thinking about power spikes, thinking about this later stages in the game, when it comes to laning, which is obviously talked about more than any other stage in the game, probably in Dota, do you think that laning is it almost too naive to try and visualize this late game spike without really just being like, actually, let's just pick really strong lanes that we're going to win, and then we'll deal with our spike afterwards, if you know what I mean? Like, we'll get there when we get there. Like, how important do you think the lanes are just so important that this whole concept of think about, a 25-minute spike or a 35-minute spike is actually just well, it doesn't matter, just win lanes, and then the game will take care of itself.
I don't think winning lanes is as easy as it used to be. I don't think. Well, if I think about games of Dota that I've played in, party, solo, I don't feel like it's common that one person or one of the lanes is like won definitively. It's only in like stompy semi-pro games or like just kind of stompy games where I feel like that happens. So because therefore makes me feel no, you do need to be thinking about the bigger picture later on. I know Adam might maybe say, okay, we lose every lane in our R2TL.
Certainly makes it harder.
Which definitely makes it harder.
It's not that you need to win; it's just you can't lose.
Yeah,
yeah. If you go even, it's so much easier than losing.
Oh, definitely.
Because the idea of winning a lane, I just don't think that is common. Because if that happens, it's typically like you mentioned, Gork's team losing to Sin Stack in like 12 minutes. Like if you win lanes, okay, yeah, and you're like a competent team, you should be able to close a game out in 15, 20. Because winning a lane is like 1k gold advantage per minute. I mean, that's real stompy shit. But that won't ever happen in a normal pub game. So, yeah, I don't think lanes were ever really, really won that hard to just solely think on that. Like, I don't think if we went, okay, in our next party match, let's pick 2 heroes in our side lane or safe lane, and we're going to really win our lane. That's going to be, we're all off like pre-game focus and energy and idea thinking goes into. I don't think we'll smash the lane as hard as we hope to.
I agree.
Therefore, we should be thinking, okay, let's not lose the lane, like Adam says, and like get what we need and can out of it, and then think how we then move and transition into later stages of the game and to these like powerful spike points, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, I do agree, and I think the game has trended and has been trending more towards favouring this kind of more macro conceptualization of how to win a game of Dota, like this more bigger picture strategic thinking of this period of the game, say 25, whatever it is, rather than in the past where lanes were, I feel like, more just everything. You used to see teams like EG would just, all of their thinking would be, how do we crush this lane as much as possible? I feel like it's going more towards, you're almost rewarded more for conceptualizing the game in a slightly different manner and thinking there's enough tools at our disposal. And obviously, when we pick, it's not like we're going to not think about the lanes. But if we have a lane that isn't going to get crushed, and I think it's easier to play lanes now where you're not going to get crushed, just because of the way Dota is in this patch, it's like, as long as you're not getting crushed, like Adam says, that's fine. And it's like Marco said, it's hard, seems to me quite hard to get crushed in the lanes these days. And so the game is opened up to thinking, actually, let's think about this mid game and let's think about this power spike that we're trying to hit. Not to suggest that lanes aren't important, of course, but they're almost like something to get through in a good shape rather than something to win the game during that time. Yeah,
like that big deny XP mechanic having multiple changes is like one example of how mechanically winning the lane phase doesn't transition into as big as an advantage as it used to.
Yeah.
And then it's like things like towers being stronger and harder to therefore close out a game and take objectives, etc. Rosh is harder to take, etc. These changes all soften the advantage you could get from like really winning a lane. So the idea of winning a lane and coming out on top in golden XP or whatever against your opposing enemy doesn't transition into as much as a snowball or into as much as a lead as it has done in the past. Therefore, you do still need to be thinking about mid-game fighting items, etc.
Yeah, And also just like towers being a little bit tankier. Like they're all small changes, but they all build. Adam, I don't know what your opinion is on how the laning stage fits into our conception of strategic Dota that we've been talking about.
No, I just think it's really important that you don't lose them. Drawing them is fine. Losing multiple, I feel like your win percentage just tanks. Only because the map gets like just crushed. It gets shut off so hard, and then nobody can be anywhere. Kind of.
Yeah. And suddenly you're presented with a game state that you couldn't have conceptualized before. It's like it doesn't. If you think about, oh well, what points are our 5 heroes going to be good against their 5 heroes? Well, suddenly their 5 heroes are an item up, and that's the game state that we find ourselves in, or they're 2 levels up. It's like, well, we thought we were going to be this strong during this timing that was going to let us get to this power spike. Well, actually, the game state, because we've lost our lanes, is completely different, and now it's like everything's up in the air, like you said.
I do find it weird how you're losing every lane every game, because genuinely I struggle to think of games I've experienced where it's like, oh, I mean, I feel like it was a rare occasion would be, yeah, you're playing a ranked game and you lose every lane and then it's like GG 20 minutes, but that's not normal.
Yeah. You would think.
Yeah. So I'm like, maybe the fact that you've got
every game.
Quite varied MMRs, and like the games you play in an R2DLR, they're not akin to a pub. There's first the CM.
Yeah, it's more coordinated.
It's more coordinated, and then there's wider variance of skill across players. So then there's like more chance to kind of stomp a lane, say.
You stomp one lane, and then the other support goes to that lane to help, and then you lose the other lane because you don't have the lane that you planned on, and then middle loses, and there you go. That's how you lose all 3, because that's
Marco,
a 1v1.
Marco, Queen of Pain spammer, like sitting there like, man, I don't know how these people lose lanes. These noobs losing lanes. Just use Shadow Strike, man. My God. Final thing to talk about is more how to play the actual spike itself, and the kind of things you want to be, basically what you want to do when you have successfully reached this spike. And I suppose this is mildly self-explanatory in the sense that you want to group up, you want to smoke. What kind of things do you think are important, Marco, to do when you think, wait a second, we are really strong in this moment, or we are really strong for the next 5 minutes? What do you want to happen at that point in a game?
I think it's just as simple as balling up as fast as you can. And I think one necessary precursor to that is make sure you don't have 2 lanes shoving into you hard. Like, say if you shove one lane and then all push another lane, and the third lane is like pushing onto you. Yeah, sometimes that's fine, but basically quickly nuke a couple waves in, say, the side lanes or one of the mid lanes, and look to just as quickly as you can be 5 in a really aggressive, like you're at the enemy tier 2. And so still talking about, oh, what do you do about shoving these, say, over a couple lanes? Please what your team should be doing is prioritize who can do that most time efficiently. Don't have some, like, I hate it when you've got, say, this position 5, like, oh, I'll shove out this lane, and it's like, dude, no, I can do this 20 times faster than you with my items, mobility, etc., etc. You just start fucking walking over to the enemy tier 3, and I'll meet you there in 20 seconds. Like, simple shit like that is really important, because then you're all at 5, because it's all about wanting to be 5 at like the enemy's doorstep as soon as you can to make use of that spike that you have. So don't fuck around, because honestly, I think you could have pub games. I feel like I've played pub games where we hit this spike and it takes us like minutes to assemble, to like Avengers assemble. Fucking, what's that like? In America, when there's that like a desert and that ball of hay goes across, and it's like
tumbleweed.
I'm like looking around, what the fuck is my team? and they're all just taking too long to assemble, like that's problematic, and that won't help you win games. But if you can really efficient about how you like quickly shove the waves and quickly meet where you need to meet, to me that's like, yeah, that's go time, and that's how you should be acting when you hit that spike.
Yeah, and you mentioned how bad it feels when it takes ages to assemble, and then another crazy feels bad is when you know you're way stronger than them, and because you didn't push out a lane, suddenly you've got to TP home and basically waste like 2-3 minutes of time to de-push a wave to like the river, so you don't just get split pushed to death by like an anti-mage or like a random lone druid or something, and then suddenly you feel like you should have just won the game, but instead you're de-pushing. It's like the whole thing's just ruined. So de-pushing is definitely like something that's worthy of going on the checklist. I don't know if you thoughts, Adam, on like how to play a power spike. I was thinking something along the lines of also thinking about being prepared for a team fight and like making sure you position so you're not going to lose, if you know what I mean. But
outside of just grouping up, I mean, from a support perspective, you want to make sure you have everything you need, whether that be wards or sentries or smoke. One of the most triggering things is when people call for smokes and then you just stand there for like 30 seconds waiting for the smoke to get put in the inventory. Okay, let's go. Oh wait, no, Slark is over here. Let him walk over here. It's like, we don't need everybody to be in here. It's like, it feels so bad. But it's definitely like wards and sentries. Make sure everybody's got a TP just in case, that split push happens. You want to be able to do something.
Yeah, and also when I'm thinking about supports particularly, it's in these big pushes when you know by the very nature of the fact that you're pushing a tower,
hey, maybe don't walk up and hit it as the support.
Exactly my point. You know you're going to have at least one hero in vision. More often than not, you're going to have two heroes that are just straight up in vision. So you're almost sacrificing a little bit of your power spike in the sense of you're giving the enemy perfect information on the whereabouts of two heroes probably, which obviously makes your relative strength slightly less, but hopefully your spike is strong enough that it's worth sacrificing that little bit. Don't sacrifice any more than you have to. If you're a support, or if you're a hero that you think there's about to be a team fight, I need to be out of vision to maximize how strong I am, don't just walk up and hit a hero because we're pushing, so therefore I'm going to hit a tower. It's like that's such a silly thing to do. Yeah, exactly. And that plays into the larger picture of if we're pushing and we're going to have heroes in vision, we need to preempt and be ready for a team fight at all times. So, for example, in that Viper game, like, yes, we're going to have a Wraith King with Radiance hitting a tower. And yes, if all of our heroes hit the tower, it would die faster. But we also would probably lose a team fight. So, position perfectly, be ready to do your job in the spike, which is going to be a different job than you've had for the rest of the game. If you're a Lion with a Blink, and you've got an Aegis Lifestealer, and you're pushing high ground, your job is not to blink to tier 4s to try and get a Hex spike off and then retreat. Your job's to stay out of vision, wait for them to commit to Lifestealer and overcommit, and then counter-initiate. And that change of mindset is really important if you're going to like realise this edge that you have, and realise your power spike. I don't know, Adam, if you've got any thoughts on what you should do, how you'd reevaluate a game, or what you should do if the spike comes and goes and it isn't really quite what you thought, and then you're suddenly in this anarchical world of, well, this big spike failed, what now? What kind of things do you think you can do at that point? What should you be thinking about?
You mean like if your team feeds 24,000 gold worth of rapiers to the other team?
Exactly. You know what I'm thinking about.
Yeah. Okay. You can think. Well, you think like why did this fail? Right? Was it just because we didn't play it right? or is it because we're just not as strong? So usually if you're pretty far ahead and your spike window's big enough, you can try again. But if you get into like 2 failed pushes, you kind of just go into, you're definitely behind at that point. You can either try again, maybe you got the glyph down, or maybe you got rid of their buybacks or something the first time, or maybe Roche is back up, or you can just try and choke the map. Just like farm the waves, farm the jungle, their jungle. Just don't let them get anything. Maybe get one more item on somebody that's important, whether it be like a BKB, or maybe we're at like later stage in the game, so you need a hex or a nullifier or something. One of those bigger tier items to break through a spell, and try again.
Yeah, I think the safest approach definitely would be, so say, you're thinking, let's go get a lane of rack, but then it doesn't quite succeed. Maybe you get a tier 3, maybe you don't. But when it didn't succeed, instead just think, all right, can we get a tier 3? Ideally, let's try and get a tier 3, and then let's play safe and just go shrines and squeeze map, like Adam says, and typically just wait next rush. Rather than, often, if you're far enough ahead, you can go, okay, let's try again. Maybe some big ultimates are down. But in closer cut cases, it's probably better to just play it safe, not be too overzealous, and therefore just, if you can, ideally you get shrines. If not, just squeeze the map and really just go next rush and next item, because with additional rushes you're going to get cheeses, refresher shards, etc. So they are even more value than just an Aegis. And then there might be some big items in particular, like a nullifier or a hex, whatever, also necessary to get you over that hump to break base, say. So I think this post Spyco, if it went badly or not as intended, it's always better to err on the side of caution and just take this pace a bit slower.
And also, one thing I'd add, I agree with everything that's been said, and the thing I'd add also is, like with everything in this podcast, easier said than done. But you nevertheless want to be reassessing the game and thinking, can we get to another point in the game where we're strong? I wouldn't necessarily say, oh well, our push failed. We tried to get racks and we failed. Now we just headlessly approach the rest of the game and hope that a situation arises in which we'll be strong again. It's like you still want to be proactive. I'd strongly believe in remaining proactive, and even if you're behind in a game, still making plays, however small, to get yourself closer to being in a position to be strong. Maybe your big push failed and you think, well, they might be strong now for this reason. Our push failed for this reason, and therefore they are strong now. But in 10 minutes' time, if we make these plays, if we do the right things, we'll be stronger again. It'll be our time again for this reason. Say, we'll get these 2 items, or we'll get our mid to a point where he's got like Nullifier Bloodthorn, or our carry will finish his AC, or our offlaner might have his hex ready. Just these things, and you start building a puzzle, and suddenly you think, actually in 10 minutes' time, we'll be stronger again. And so it's almost like you want to keep reassessing the game state, even if it hasn't gone to how you initially thought. No doubt, if you play correctly, you're going to be able to navigate to a spot where you are stronger than the enemy team. And part of that will be skill, but part of that will also be strategy. So it is worth saying, for this sort of post-spike reassessment period that you'll find yourself in. Any thoughts? And anything that we've talked about, guys? Any closing thoughts on the sort of general conception of strategic Dota?
No.
That's got to be a good sign, I think. No closing thoughts. Seems pretty good to me.
So I'll buy rapiers on Zeus.
Yeah. That's strategy 101.
Yeah.
That's like, it's definitely for me. It's definitely an interesting topic. I feel like it's the two parts of being a really good Dota team is strategy and tactics. If we presume that just like individual skill is at the highest level is pretty constant. If you look at a team like Secret and how dominant they are, Team Secret, you would say they are so much better strategically and tactically than, I don't know, another stack, to a much higher degree than they are individually more skilled than the other team. They probably have that as well, but it's the strategy and the tactics that take them to a whole nother level. Strategy being like macro, this is what we want to happen at this point in the game, and then tactics being like in the moment, how do you execute that power spike? The strategy being visualizing the power spike itself. Tactics, how do you execute it? What little moves do we make to achieve this macro goal, this macro strategy? So yeah, I guess that'll just be my closing thought. It's so interesting to think about and talk about these things.
I like that. That's a good analogy or a good illustration.
Oh, thanks. It's not mine. I can't remember who said it, but I've definitely heard someone talk about that. It might have been Kyle. Anyway. So yeah, Ep 35, that's the Friday Ep. Next week is a Tuesday Ep. So we'll see about that one. Perhaps some post-TI Qual meta Ep or something. We'll have to see what's in the pipeline for then. So yeah, thanks Marco. Hopefully won't be joining us from a hotel next time.
Yeah, hopefully it's not been too trash can.
It all depends on whether I can edit out the background squeak. If I can't edit out the background squeak, then I'll have to replace you with Craig, automated voice.
Text to speech.
Oh, that would be funny actually. Text speech.
Yeah. You have to write a transcript of your lines and then text to speech it, donation style. Yep. And thanks Adam too. I've no doubt you'll be here for next Ep.
Absolutely.
Keep that 100% attendance flying about. First name on the team sheet before me, for sure. And I too will be there for next Ep. So bring on the final whistle and we'll see you again very shortly. Don't buy rapiers on Zeus.